Okay, good morning and aloha. So I guess it's not coffee break, by the way. We're going to continue with our Molokai panel. We thank you folks for the opportunity to share with you what we're doing to get a very small, isolated island grid, Molokai, 200% renewable energy, maybe sooner than the state mandate of 2045. So joining me on the panel is Iolani Kuoha. She's a STEMWorks facilitator and Hawaiian immersion instructor at Molokai Middle School. In the middle is Mahina Martin, our Manager of Government and Community Relations at Maui Electric. And last but not least is Matt McNeff, our Director of Generation or Power Supply at Maui Electric. So good morning.
Aloha.
Getting our isolated island grids in Hawaii to 100% renewable energy poses unique issues in our islands. And what we wanted to do was share what we're doing on Molokai. With Molokai especially, we knew that we couldn't just come up with a resource plan for renewables that got us to 100%, go to the community and share with them what we plan to do. We knew that it was important to do something different, meaning work from the outside in. Listen to the wants and needs of the community there and weave in their preferences to our planning process and move forward together. So with that, I'd like to ask Iolani, who is a resident of Molokai, to start us off by sharing what it's like to live on that small isolated island that Doug McLeod shared with us earlier this morning.
Aloha mai kākou. O wau o Iolani Kuoha, o wau kawahine o Noa, loa ia'u e lima mau keiki, a o wau ke kupuna hine o loa e lima mau mo'opuna pū. E puka ana wau mai ke kula ki'iki mo Molokai, o wau ke kumu mai ke kula waina o Molokai ma ka polokalamu o hina I ka mālama. Aloha everybody. I wanted to start off with, my name is Iolani Kuoha, and the picture you see is of my family, my ohana. It's very important for me whenever I travel or introduce myself. It's really important that I introduce where I come from and who are my family, because family is important. I have 5 children and 5 mo'opuna, which is grandchildren. For me, I also wanted to share as well, I'm a kumu with Ohine Ikamalama, which is a Hawaiian language immersion program. I'm a middle school teacher. And I teach everything. So I'm going to talk about my class. I teach everything in Hawaiian. Go figure. Language arts. How do you teach that, right? STEM. I wanted to mahalo Leslie, if she's in the audience with Maui Economic Development Board, for allowing me to be part of MEDB with the STEMWorks, as a STEMWorks facilitator. I take advantage a lot with the opportunity they give me as a kumu to come and get facilitated, learn all about energy, utilize their curriculum that they provide for our school. And so I just wanted to kind of share with you my haumana up there, and they're both 7 and 8. So on Molokai, it's separated. They have a 7 and 8 program, school, and then they go to the high school, which is on the same campus. And so we have like this imaginary line that goes through the campus. So the kids know that they can't pass that imaginary line. That's kind of interesting. So I wanted to kind of give you an overview or kind of like a little picture about Molokai. So don't get shocked with the first picture that you see. Yeah. So before we started, some of you may not know what Molokai looks like. Some of you may not know. And so this is my small little island on Molokai. And I wanted to share that this picture comes from the Department of Hawaiian Homes. Many of my students live on Hawaiian homes. So if you look at the yellow shaded area, those are all Hawaiian homelands. So many of our residents are either residential or ag. Yeah? And in ag, you can either farm or you can raise cattle, yeah, to do that. So I wanted to share and show you our island. I'm a fourth-generation homesteader. Many of the families that live on Molokai are like 7 generations. They've lived there forever. Both my husband and I are farmers. I always say it's my husband, not I. I'm the educator, right? And so my husband is a farmer, organic farmer. He wants me to express that. We live on 40 acres of homestead. And so I just wanted to share, as a native Hawaiian, it's really important for me to tell you the statistics. So there's 62% of Hawaiians that live on Molokai. So there's actually 4,000 native Hawaiians on Molokai. Our population, I heard someone said earlier, there's about 8,000. And all these years, I was saying, oh, there's only 6,000. So yeah, they're rising. There's a lot more people on that island. So I want to share just another picture of, and the top right picture, just a small little thing, what we deal with on Molokai. It's, if you look on the top left, that's yours, that's our gas price. We made the news, Channel 2. They wanted to know, $4, come on now, $4.15, if I'm not mistaken, or 14 cents, right? Well, when I left yesterday, it was $5.09, or 5 cents. But that's still expensive. We have 2 family-owned groceries, 2 gas stations. So they have to fight who's going to get my money. We have no traffic lights. Can you imagine that? Yeah? So you can sit at the stop sign and just wave to each other. Who wants to go first, right? Because we don't have a traffic light. Another thing is, here's a shocker, we don't have McDonald's, nor do we have Costco. Right, Pai Lima, that is so great, right? But as a teacher in Costco, you become an avid shopper. I can shop for everything less than 10 minutes. Because that's all we have, running to the airport after our training. Yeah, we're like, let's do a Costco run. You have 10 minutes, Iolani. All right, I could do it in 5, right? And so that's the other thing that we have to deal with, yeah, is living. There's no Costco, no McDonald's, Walmart, Target. Those are our favorite stores when we come here. But the beauty of it is that our island is rich with resources. And we tend to learn how to be self-sufficient on our island. We were taught by our kupuna, yeah, which is our elders on the island, how to survive, how to malama, how to care for our land is really important. And we were taught to respect the aina, the ocean, and what it provides for you, because if you malama the aina, the ocean, it will take care of you. And so the next thing I wanted to share, because I had to get my farm in there, so you notice there's like pictures of my farm. The middle top and the bottom right is my farm. The one that I wanted to share with you is on your right. That's my son. He was like, Mom, are you serious? You're going to show everybody? I said, yes, the one without the shirt, the skinny guy. Not just kidding. But anyway, living on Molokai, you have to be able to go holo holo. So my son, at 14 years old, he can go holo holo. So he has he'e, right? That 2 he'e, along with my son-in-law, yeah, who is not from Molokai, not even from the state. He's from Las Vegas, Nevada. Oh, he would say Mesquite, right? So this boy, fresh off the boat, had to learn how to holo holo. And what perfect person was my 14-year-old son. So this boy was able to go and learn how to get he'e, squid. And that is enough to feed our ohana, right? And then the last picture, the one in the middle, I just wanted to share with you how kupuna is very important to us. This kupuna is Uncle Joe Maui Sr., and he's actually my classmate's dad. And I love and respect Uncle Joe because he has taught his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren the importance of Malamada Aina. Yeah, and if we didn't have our kupuna on the island, can you imagine people just go and wreak havoc on our ocean? And so with him educating, yeah, our people about how important it is to Malamada Aina, to Malamadis, we will be able to move forward on our island. And so I just wanted to share just these little pictures about Molokai, just so that you have a picture of what Molokai is, yeah? And the last picture, how many of you know what is OPE, right? OPE, right? How many of you know what that picture is on the bottom? Yeah, that is ha'uke. That is a delicacy. Like, everybody wants that, but we have to gather that sparingly. And I put that picture is because that's how we need to malama our ocean, because that's a rare thing on Molokai. And so I know and I respect and love Uncle Joe, and he is one of the main kupuna who I feel is a leader in our community. Mahalo.
Iolani, thank you for sharing the Hawaiian culture, the specialness and uniqueness of Molokai with all of us, because I know that the audience here is not all from Maui County. We have many who have traveled far from the mainland and even internationally. And we also have many students joining us this morning, which is so awesome. So having an educator here with us is just perfect. I think as you heard from Iolani, the specialness and the uniqueness and the care for the island and their resources is very, very important. So that's where I mentioned that working from the outside and understanding what's important to that community was so important, because we know technologically we can get to 100% renewable, but at what cost, and what is the community willing to accept and adjust so it moves forward as opposed to being in conflict with each other? So Mahina Martin, our government and community relations manager at Maui Electric, helped lead our effort to navigate through the community. So Mahina, will you please share with us how we engage the Molokai community?
Sure. As Sharon said, we can do it through technology, but truly what we would not want to do is invite ourselves into a community if the community was not accepting, if we could not do it in partnership. So a critical part of succeeding in our efforts to bring Molokai to 100% renewable even sooner than the state goal of 2045 is to work with the community. So our approach has been to combine not just the utilities expertise, but also how do we take the expertise of the community, of the folks on Molokai, because quite frankly, they're experts, as we are in our own hometowns, of our lifestyle, our values, our needs. What are some of the aspirations that we have? And how do we work to bring together all of that for the best win-win possible? So we embarked on this long journey. It's been a while now, but we wanted you to hear from their own voices what community engagement means and why it matters so much to Molokai. So here's what they told us about the need for community engagement.
Process is important to the community of Molokai because it's a small community. Any change on the island has a dramatic effect on each and every individual, and sometimes the effect is cost, sometimes the effect is convenience or disruption. And so how an organization comes onto Molokai and introduces any change needs to be through involvement. So right from the very beginning, the community wants to know that the company is going to do something. So for example, when Miko was talking about alternative energy, to be able to engage the community in terms of what do they see. And I'm not saying the community is necessarily has consensus about what they want, but that all the voices need to have the opportunity to be heard.
The Molokai community is often very disenfranchised. We don't have a local government. We only have 3 elected officials from this island. And so often Molokai does not have a voice in important decision making. And another complication is that even though many people call this the last Hawaiian island, it actually has the highest percentage of foreign ownership of any island in the state. So when decisions are made for our community, many times the community has to get a little feisty in order to have itself heard. And so we found over the years that those who approach this community seeking dialogue as opposed to immediate agreement are usually more successful in the long run.
So knowing that the expectations of the Molokai community was a high bar for us, and they have quite a history of protecting their culture, their resources, and their needs and values themselves, we moved forward with a process that was intended to build trust and respect, and ultimately create meaningful dialogue. Not so much just sit down just for the sake of it, but what can they bring to the table to match what we can bring to the table to bring balance to an outcome. It was an opportunity to lay the foundation for inclusive planning and a great opportunity to demonstrate our willingness to work with the community. This approach has had a positive impact, as you can see by our next video clip.
The process that Maui Electric's been using on Molokai is fantastic. And I would be lying if I didn't say that there was a time when many years ago when it was pretty rocky on the island. But over the last couple of years, Maui Electric's been fantastic about, first of all, having meetings, being willing to take the people who want to vent about past things, to get some of those out of the way, and that now more and more the meetings are very pleasant actually, because we're talking about futuristic items, what needs to be done, how to do it, and we've seen some of the ideas implemented. The most recent one, even though we only have something like 21 electric cars on the island, the discussion has always been first, how do we get them repaired, and secondly, where would we, plug in if we're in town or at the school or whatever. And so it's exciting that Maui Electric is listening to those ideas. Maui Electric was willing to bring their senior officers and the people who headed departments so that we actually had knowledgeable people at the meetings. Because in previous times, there would maybe be one or two, and half the time the people couldn't answer the question. But it showed the commitment that they had to be able to bring people to face us. And some of the meetings years ago were not that nice, but today our people, I think it's important that we still have that connection. We know who those people are now when they come on island, what they're doing, keep us updated through multimedia, but also still face-to-face. And so that's important to this community.
What was done in the process that Maui Electric mounted over the past year to try to solicit input from our community was voluntary, and we really appreciated it. I know that the PUC has new performance-based standards for the business models for electric companies across the state, and I think MECO really got a head start on that by deciding that it was going to come to our community and try to get feedback from people who were not behind the 8 ball in terms of some major decision that was going to be made regardless of input. So I think that was an excellent process. Folks who organized it were sensitive to Molokai protocol, which is different from larger islands. For example, here, if you really want to do community outreach, you've got to go to every district on the island. We're a small island, but we have 4 districts. And so MECO did that. The discussions that came out of those meetings were very substantive, very helpful. And I was proud of the people that I participated in them with, because it often amazed me how deeply people had been thinking about this issue, but they hadn't been asked yet. So I appreciate MECO for asking.
So what was that process? We share with you some of our photos. In the last several years, a few years, we've been on island with a team, and we've been at it for a very long time on Molokai. This isn't the first time that we arrived in the community to try to work in partnership, but we really intensified our efforts and built on earlier years so that we could continue forward. Our efforts included 13 roundtable sessions. We gathered a little over 100 people to participate in the sessions. And out of those sessions, we got about 475 plus comments. And those comments and that input was used to help us advance our planning in our move towards more renewable energy for Molokai as we get into the goal. Part of the 13 sessions included 3 with students. We met with middle school, Yolani's class actually, high school students from Molokai High as well as Akaula Charter School. And by far, those sessions were the most dynamic and most interesting. It gave us a chance to learn from the students, and these students were very curious, really enthusiastic, and well-informed. You'd be really surprised and really enjoy an opportunity to sit down with them. In one roundtable session, it was so engaging, the discussion. The students asked us, what exactly is going to happen with all the PV panels? And we hear that throughout the community, but to hear a 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 16, 17 actually ask us that was amazing. We also heard from the students in one group about an opportunity, because each session we talked about the availability and what different resources are for renewable energy. And we really wanted their impact. And the question to all groups, whether you were a veteran, we had a veterans group, a business roundtable, or the students, or anyone in between those demographics, we asked them, what are some of the concerns you would like us to know about and be aware as we start to plan? Because you're the experts in your community. And it was interesting because in one student group, they said, well, we heard, or we're just learning now, about waste to energy. So we had a great conversation about what that would look like for Molokai, because the students said, we have so much rubbish, just piles and mountains of trash. Surely we could just burn them, right? That's what we're hearing. So we talked a little bit about that, and we asked the question, what happens if you run out of trash that could be burned? And they said, oh, we'll just make more. We'll just run around the island and make more, go look for more. And we said, okay, well, not all trash can be turned into energy. What if with all the energy your island uses, we would have to bring in trash? And the room went quiet, and I remember one student later saying, why on earth would we do that? We wouldn't import other people's trash. I think we just cut back on using electricity instead of bringing more trash to our island. And it was such just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity and conversation. And we're so inspired and proud of the youth on all islands, and especially on Molokai. And one thing that we realized as we went into this is that the youth today are going to be the adults living with the decisions that we are making. So it was important to include them, as it was the same way we did with all the adult groups as well. A 17-year-old that you know today, if they're running around your house or a neighbor or someone else's kid, will be in their early 40s in 2045. And so we knew from the start of our process that it was important to engage them. And in this process, these teenagers are able to participate in shaping that future. Here's one of our students thanking us for the opportunity to participate in shaping that plan.
Hi, my name is Peyton Gillespie, and I just wanted to say thank you guys very much for doing this. It's awesome that you guys are the electric company and that you're willing to make that change. You want to make the change, and I think it's going to make a great difference for my generation and future generations, and it's just going to be really awesome. So thank you so much.
Nothing like hearing it from directly from them. And finally, in terms of community relations, I wanted to point out that it's important to see that in Hawaii, relationships here are very distinct, very different, and also very precious to us. Because as an island state, we're dependent on each other. And as an island people, we put a heavy weight on our culture, our traditions, our heritage. And that, quite frankly, in doing business with our island communities, it's not simply a transaction of a purchase or an exchange for service and monetary means of point A to point B, that in fact we are circular in nature. And so when we do business with the communities we serve, it's only the beginning. It's never quite just the end. And that for us is really important because we as a company who have a very long legacy of working in Hawaii, we can recognize the different characteristics of every island. In working with the Molokai community, we know that it has been a constant weaving of what's internal and external. And there's so much that is necessary to bring success to something as important as making an island as isolated as Molokai 100% renewable. So it's almost like a hakule. And in this hakule, I'm waiting for oh, there you go. If you've never seen a hakule, and I have to say, this is uncoordinated. We wanted to talk about the hakule, and Iolani shows up with a hakule that she had made, and we did not tell her, so as I talked about it earlier, I was a little stunned by how serendipitous it was. But for us, doing business in Hawaii is like a hakule. It's very unique. If you've never seen a hakule, please take the opportunity to learn how to make one or look for one. It's so unique. Every flower is picked. No two hakules are alike ever. It's done deliberately and done with the intention of giving it to someone that you had in mind. So it's designed, it's picked that way, the flowers are like that. And it's also long-lasting, something that we want to be around for a while. And underneath it, if you look at the photo there, underneath is the weaving of it. And the weaving of it is done not just skillfully, but firmly to make sure that that lei lasts a very, very long time. And that's, to me, is how we do business, and that's how we do community engagement in Hawaii. Because that is unique to us, and it's the type of relationship we want with the communities that we live, we serve, and our employees are part of. And we're very, very privileged and very honored that we've been part of Molokai through the years. So like a hakule, our community engagement is part of the work with 100% or bringing 100% renewable. And as I said, it's about weaving different things. And part of that weaving has been the operational side and the internal work we've been at for the last few years.
Thank you, Mahina. Yes, weaving not just the community input, but also just our operational needs and the technicalities of making sure that we provide reliable service to our customers there 24/7. And so joining us here is Matt, who operates his folks operate the grid on Molokai. Can you share with us maybe some of how we operate and maybe some of the challenges and adjustments that the team there has had to make?
Sure. Okay, so just a little background. The Molokai Grid services about 3,200 customers, and for comparative purposes, that's about 5% of Maui or 1% of Oahu. There are only 8 distribution circuits on the island. The peak load there, the annual peak load, is between 5 and 6 megawatts, and the minimum is about 1.5 megawatts. And so historically, we would have seen those that type or minimums at early morning hours when most people are sleeping, around 3 a.m. But if you've come to any of the past energy conferences, you might remember that Molokai has an extremely high penetration of distributed PV. So right now it's about 3 megawatts that have either been installed or approved to be installed. And that's 3 megawatts that we don't have visibility to or controllability of. And that's why the minimum load is now in the middle of the day as opposed to at night. And so, that's one of the major challenges that come with a lot of distributed PV. We've been working on solutions to address that and some of the other challenges. And considering the small amount of customers on Molokai, we're always looking for opportunities to partnership with different entities to try to mitigate some of the financial impacts to the customers. A couple examples of this are that we were able to install both a battery energy storage system as well as a load bank on Molokai, and we partnered with Hawaii Natural Energy Institute to do that. And then we're able to bring down the cost for all of the customers.
Thank you for sharing those perspectives. So Matt, I'm can you share what operationally the load bank and the battery were used for?
Okay. Okay, just a little background. So the Molokai grid, again, it's, say 3 to 4 megawatts typically, and it's pretty light. I mean, that's not a lot of system to ride through different events or contingencies. So if you have a fault or you have something go wrong in the system, the frequency swings that you'll get on a small grid like that are much greater than what you'll see in the, in the mainland or even larger grids like Oahu. And as a result, I mean, well, I guess related to a lot of the distributed PV that was installed, they have some of the earlier ride-through characteristics, maybe more suitable for bigger grids. And so during some of the events on Molokai, a lot of the legacy or older PV will turn off. And that sort of goes making like a bad situation worse. And so we've been trying to use the battery as a way to try to keep the frequency within the range that none of that PV will trip off. That's one of the ways we've been using the battery. And then the load bank is used more so that if the load suddenly drops so low that we're hitting the minimums on the generators, and that's typically when maybe the whole island will have sun. Some clouds will pass over and suddenly there'll be a lot of PV generation. The units have the potential to drop below their minimums, and then we'd use the load bank to turn on and kind of keep the load just for temporarily above the minimum loading of the units.
Thank you, Matt. So essentially, it helps us to maintain that reliable service to our customers. But the utility solutions aren't the only things that we're looking at. I think we appreciate the customers on Molokai who have invested in rooftop PV systems. And I think we're looking to offer new customer options. So can you share a little bit about what those options look like?
Sure. So one we have is called the Community-Based Renewable Energy Program. And that program allows a larger renewable energy system to be installed anywhere on Molokai. And then for customers, and regardless of where they're located, to participate in that program and get the benefits of the renewable energy system without necessarily having to install anything on their roof or have to finance the whole system. We also came up with a couple pilots specifically for Molokai because of the sort of eroding daytime load issue. And those pilots use either they use a battery or controllability to help mitigate the solar's impact on lessening the daytime load.
So electric vehicles, we've heard about a little discussion about that earlier. They also are part of our clean energy future because it also helps us to clean the transportation sector. But to the extent that customers or EV drivers are able to charge during the middle of the day, it does also help with that minimum load situation that Matt talked about. Can you share what we've done on the island to help promote electrification of transportation?
Sure, and to a certain extent, Molokai is a great island. It helps to mitigate two of the challenges we spoke about already today. One is it's an attractive option for $5 a gallon gasoline. And also, as you mentioned, it helps to mitigate the lowering daytime load. So in order to support the adoption of electric vehicles, Maui Electric was able to install a fast charger in Kaunakakai. And after getting feedback from the community, we adjusted the location of the charger, as well as included workforce development education for the maintenance of the vehicles. And during the dedication, we were able to dedicate or donate an electric vehicle to Maui Economic Opportunity, or MEO. So MEO is a local nonprofit that provides transportation services to the people of Molokai. And so by doing so, we were able to help MEO further their mission and also, hopefully generate additional interest in electric vehicles. During the dedication, we had Molokai High School students help the attendees with the online tool that we have to help sort of compare the benefits of owning an electric vehicle as opposed to a conventional one.
So speaking of the students, Iolani, As an educator, and especially a STEMworks facilitator, how do you feel about engaging the youth in events such as this or our process?
I think it's really important. For me, exposing my kids, my students to anything and everything, I'm like for it. And I just wanted to share with you, back in February when the weather was like really bad, you know that we have our barge system that comes twice a week. And so one of the issues, and the students was like, oh, we never have barge. I mean, the kids know when the barge is coming because you know when you go to the store, everything is filled. So if you go shop on Thursday at Molokai, there's nothing. So you got to plan your shopping. So anyway, I told the kids, okay, so what happens, you know? And I said, so what do you think happens to our visitors? So our kids, they look at it like, oh, come on, we have our ice box. I was like, okay, explain to me what is our ice box. And I said, we can go holo holo, you know, we can survive. And I said, but what about our visitors? And they're like, right, what about our visitors? So one of the things that the kids decided to do, not to help the barge, because that was like a totally different scenario, but they wanted to actually figure out one problem. And so one of the curriculum, or several of the curriculums I use in the classroom, is the engineering design process. I've also used the island energy inquiry curriculum as well. But I wanted to share with you this EDP process, the engineering design process. And there's all these steps. You got to figure out what, in your community, what is the problem. So the community they used is my classroom. And MEDB provides all this high-tech equipment for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to malama these equipment, and the only way to do it is to have AC, air conditioning, in my classroom. So I told the students, you guys have to figure it out. This is our problem, so you guys figure it out. So the kids actually did like all of this researching. They figured out what is a BTU, how much BTU we need in order to run an AC in our classroom. They went and researched. They contacted a local air conditioning system company on the island, and they did all of this research. They asked him to come so they could present to him, this is what we found, you know, what kind of unit do you have? And we want solar. We don't want electric, we want solar. So I said, okay. So they did this whole proposal to him. He turned around, gave them, okay, this is the price list that you have to do, right? So now this is like coming like real world experience for the students. And so they got their proposal together, they went to the principal, they did this huge presentation to the principal. Unfortunately, with DOE, there's all these rules and regulations. And so for me, the negative thing was, sorry kids, you guys cannot have AC. We just sweat it out in the classroom. I said, that's okay. But the positive thing is they were able to work with community people. They were able to build their skills on researching what they need and all of that. And it made them stronger and better, more knowledgeable, right? And so they went home and said, Mom, you know how much BTU we need in order to run our house, right? So they went that. But for me, I was like, oh my God, how much Molokai bread I have to sell for fundraise, for getting AC in my classroom. So that's me just trying to connect my students with what is out there on Molokai. That's just an example.
Thank you. No,
Wow.
that's so important because we, as was mentioned, the youth today will be our future leaders living with the decisions that we're making today. So of course, incorporating their voices and sharing their experience is so important. Mahina, working with the community, what kind of support, besides the favorable comments about the process that we heard earlier, what kind of support have they given Maui Electric in terms of reaching 100% renewable?
Well, what we've learned is that although the community would desire and celebrate more renewable energy, it still comes out to we still need to be mindful that it could not be at any cost. And cost isn't particularly just the dollars, although that's a significant part of the concern, but cost also to the culture, to the locations. We got numerous lists. One thing that we learned from this process that we probably wouldn't if we weren't there to listen was that even though I think it was almost about a decade ago, the community of Molokai was in force in opposition to windmills. And it was such a hot topic and big opposition. Other neighbor islands actually joined forces with them. So we were a little sensitive to that and actually started to think maybe that could never work for that island. But by sitting down and listening to them and understanding what cost means to them, it actually turned out that they're okay with it with certain conditions, that we understood their interests and their concerns about siting, about exporting, about what benefit it brought to their island. So that was only possible by actually having the conversations there and listening to them. So we needed to make sure that that community engagement and the support we got was organically grown and not assumed, or we just parachuted in and took everything in charge of by ourselves.
Thank you. So what do we do moving forward in terms of getting to 100%? We do have a contract for solar plus storage, but what else? Matt, can you share with us what it looks like?
Sure. So we have a competitive solicitation for additional resources planned for Molokai in the near future. As part of that, we heard the community's voices saying that they want to have a greater part in the process and potentially even submit a bid into the solicitation. So along with the competitive solicitation, we're planning on having educational workshops to kind of educate the community on the process and what some of the requirements might be.
Okay, great. So as you've heard, moving forward, we'll still involve the community as part of our process. We have some questions that have come in, and if you don't mind, we're going to go a little over just to address a couple key ones. The first one is from a student, so thank you very much for listening to our panel and engaging with us. Is it fair that Molokai's new PV project that I mentioned with solar and storage is almost double the recent cost of the RFPs on Oahu? Oh, Matt, sure.
Well, when we evaluated that project, like whenever we evaluate any of the independent power producer projects that we get, we run a scenario for 20 years or typically whatever the life of the purchase power agreement is. And, sort of like the base thing is that it has to produce savings to customers. And so, a lot goes into that, what our fuel price is going to be for the next 20 years, how we're going to operate, all those different things. But we do our best, at making educated assumptions on all those things. And that project did show that it would save customers money. So, I mean, that's sort of, it's not so much a comparison of what does this island pay as opposed to a different island. Is it going to save the customers on that island money?
Thank you. We also received a question in Hawaiian, so I did pass that over to Iolani. Are you able to view that, and does that make sense?
We're like down to 30 seconds. So, but I wanted to address one of the questions because it talks about like the culture, local culture. And I don't know if you guys heard about the windmill situation on Molokai. And, I just wanted to kind of share where I live. When I open my front door, I would see the windmill. And so I know for a fact that there was all of these studies that was going on. Would it affect culturally? The land that they were looking at, was there any cultural significance on that? And so, I mean, just coming from Molokai, you all know we're very vocal, right? And so there's some people on the island that are very passionate, that's a good word I use, that about cultural connection. So I just wanted to address that before someone asked about Makuolelo Hawaii, pehea ka wewehe ana ai ina huolelo ho, mana kumuhana stem like ole, and kalmai aikone elike me ka distributed energy resources. And so it was just explaining, right, how would I, as a Hawaiian immersion teacher, and I was just sharing with the panel, every year my students participate in STEM, science fair. And a couple years back, I did this bold move because my students, unfortunately, they can't present their science project in Hawaiian. And so what I've done was, whatever their science project is, I always have them go and research, what did the Hawaiians do at that time? How did they make that cultural connection? Because it's really important. And so when we come here to Maui, the judges are like freaking out because it's like, it's a different mana'o, it's a different perspective, where the kids are not only sharing their science fair project, but they're making the connection to culturally, like the relevancy of that, yeah? So for me, I'm learning every year with my students, and I know that it's important to keep continuing and educating my haumana on the cultural connection, especially where they come from. Because whenever you go travel, you always have to make sure that you can share with everybody where you come from, who's your foundation, who is your, sharing your mo'okuauhau, how important it is. And so I don't know if I can answer that, but in Ninau Ya'u Kela Ninau, Hele mai ma'ane and hiki ke kuka me oi. Mahalo.
Thank you. So we are out of time. Thank you again for your attention, and please join me in thanking the panelists here for joining us on this very interesting topic.
Mahalo.